Self-publishing has completely transformed my life. It has been one of the greatest gifts of my entire life. I love self-publishing and I'm super passionate about the opportunities that it provides for us as authors. However, it's not an easy path and there's a lot to know. There are definitely pros and there are definitely cons. So that's what we're going to talk about today. What are the pros and cons of self-publishing, and should you self-publish your book in 2024? Let's get started. Hello and welcome. If you are new here, my name is Sarra Cannon. I have written 29 novels. I'm almost done with my 30th. Most of them are back here, and I have been self-publishing since 2010. I have sold over 1 million copies of my books and have made millions of dollars writing. However, self-publishing is not always the easiest path. It is a faster path, and I believe that it is full of so much amazing opportunity. But like I said, there are pros and there are definitely cons, and I don't think that it's right for everybody. So we're going to go over those pros and cons today. But first, what is self-publishing? Self-publishing is just the process of becoming your own publisher. So that means making all of your own decisions about the blurb, the edits, the cover art, everything that a publisher would do for you is now your responsibility as a self-published author or an indie author. You'll hear me use those terms interchangeably, self-published versus indie. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to walk you through what I feel like are the 7 strongest and most important pros and cons of self-publishing, and why I think you should self-publish in 2024, or potentially why I think you shouldn't. But before I get started on those 7, I do want to say that this is not in any way a judgment to say this way is better or this way is better. There are just different paths to publishing. And there have been stigmas on self-publishing in the past, and there have been rocks thrown on social media over the past decade about which is the better path. But in the end, it's all just different paths with what we hope is the same result at the end: readers reading our book and finding our books and getting something out of them, right? That's what most of us want, is to make a living with our books or to get our books into the hands of people that it will mean something to. And that is possible no matter which path you choose. And what's also important to understand is that you're not making a choice forever. If you decide to self-publish, you can later go out and get an agent and traditionally publish a different series. Or if you traditionally publish to start out with, you can always write something new in the future and self-publish and become a hybrid author. When I started in 2010, a lot of people believed that if you self-published, you would never be touched with a 10-foot pole by a traditional publisher. It was like a pariah. You're ruining your career. But that hasn't proven to be true at all. And in fact, if you have great sales as an indie author, you are more likely to get a bigger advance or deal with a traditional publisher as well, because you already have a proven track record. And there have been instances of really successful indie published books that have gotten into big bookstores or hit the New York Times or have been purchased by traditional publishers for even as much as 7 figures. So whichever choice you make in the beginning, whether it's to get an agent and go the traditional route, go with a small press, or self-publish, you're not cutting off any other choices for your future. So take a deep breath and know that you really can't make a mistake. It's really just what's best for you in terms of the path to publishing right now, what's best for you and what's best for your book. And my hope is that this video will provide a little bit of clarity for that. In the end, a lot of these pros and cons are basically going to come down to this: freedom with little support versus lots of support with less freedom. Indie publishing, self-publishing is all the freedom, but all the responsibility, where traditional publishing is a smaller amount of freedom, but also a lot less responsibility because you've got support and someone else is taking on those decisions for you. So we're going to talk about those pros and cons more specifically here. So let's get into it. Number 1, biggest pro versus con of all to me is full creative control. When you are indie publishing, you have control over literally everything from the content of your book to the blurb, to how you market it, to what the cover looks like, to how you discuss it and what your messaging is. You have complete control. You can use an editor. You cannot use an editor. You can make your own cover. You can spend thousands of dollars on a cover. Literally, the choices are all yours. That means you can have as much fun with it as you want. You can have your own creative, unique vision come to life. And it's really amazing to have that amount of full control. The dark side of that, the con side of that is you have to make all the right decisions. So when you have full creative control, it means the burden of every choice comes down to you. And sometimes that can feel very overwhelming because when you've put all this money into publishing your book and getting it just right in terms of the packaging, if you don't really know if your cover is going to match what your audience expectations is, or that cover or blurb is really going to hook readers in, it can feel very vulnerable because it's all down to you. Did you make the right and best decisions to market your book and to match your book with the ideal reader or not? And that means learning, understanding the market, understanding how publishing works, how marketing works, how readers find books. There's a lot to learn when it comes to that, and that can be super time consuming. And one of the major cons to this of full creative control is that you end up spending so much of your creativity on decisions like what kind of cover art do I want to put on my book and how do I want to market it, and that drains your creative well for the actual writing. And we have to be able to do all of it all at once. We have to be able to continue writing while also making all of these other choices. And that's not easy for everybody. I would venture to say it's not easy for anybody, but some people are better at kind of spreading themselves out in those directions than others. And so that's something you might want to consider when you're thinking about whether self-publishing is right for you. Full, intense creative control, but that means all the decisions, and you have to learn about each individual piece of publishing that a publisher would traditionally do for you. And you have to become an expert basically at all of it. Number two is faster time to market. I could literally finish Disappearance of Vanessa Shaw, which is my current work in progress. It's a young adult murder mystery. I could finish it today and I could publish it in the next 2 weeks if I wanted. I could actually just publish it tomorrow if I wanted. You can literally just upload your book and press publish, and it's done instantly. Whereas with traditional publishing, sometimes people spend years, if not decades, trying to find the right agent, the right publisher for their book. And sometimes you have 5 to 10 books that never sold that you haven't been able to do anything with because you're waiting for that right publisher to pick up your book and believe in what you have to say. But with indie publishing, you can write whatever you want. You can make all these creative choices and you can instantly go to market, which is really, really exciting. And it creates just amazing amounts of opportunity. With traditional publishing, you often are limited in how many books they're going to buy from you, like maybe one book a year, maybe 2 or 3 books a year. But most people don't get more than that. With indie publishing, you could publish 30 books a year if you want. And some people actually do. I never have, but some people do. You can publish as often as you want, as frequently as you want. You can write books that are as short as you want them to be or as long as you want them to be, and you can get them to market super, super fast. And then you can start making money off those books tomorrow, instantly. And the way that the vendors like Amazon and Google Play and Apple Books and everybody pay us means that you could have money in your account from your books within 30 to 60 to 90 days after publishing it. So the route to market is incredibly fast. Now, of course, we do most of the time, most of us want to take some time to make sure we have the right cover art, that we edit our books, that we go through professional editors and beta readers. And there is a process that does slow that down, but there's no rule that says you have to do those things. So either way, even if you were to spend the next 6 months marketing and figuring out the packaging for your book, that's much faster than going to an agent, getting a traditional publishing deal, and maybe your book comes out in a year or longer. So it is faster to market, which is great. The con to that, in my mind, is that you have limited distribution. So you can get your book to market, and yes, you can get it out into the whole world. But there are networks and relationships that traditional publishers have spent decades building with booksellers and libraries and Amazon and all of these different places that we distribute traditionally published books like Barnes and Nobles and things like that. Traditional publishers have those relationships and they have those networks and those distribution channels that indie authors can't as easily access until you've reached a certain level of success. Like I can publish my book at Barnes and Noble Press, but that doesn't mean that Barnes and Nobles all over the country are automatically going to carry my book. And it doesn't mean that every library in the country is going to carry my book just because it's available. So I have access to a lot of distribution possibilities, but traditional publishers really have the relationships that make your books an automatic carry in a lot of those bookstores, if that makes sense. So you're giving up some of that. Now you can build up your own beefy, like really strong distribution over time, especially the more success you have. You can create those relationships for yourself, but you won't be able to take advantage of the existing relationship and networks and channels that traditional publishers already have. Number three, and this is a big one for those of us that like making money, higher royalties. Most vendors pay you 70% royalty on your ebook. So that means if I publish a book at $4.99, I am going to make $3.50, $3.45 off of that book. And that is a huge percentage. Back in the day when there were only really print books and not ebooks, most authors were looking at somewhere between 5 and 10%, maybe on hardcover, something like 15% of the cost of the book would come back to the author. And the author wouldn't even get all of that because their agent's going to take 15% of that plus tax and, all those different things. So it was more difficult to make money. Plus, when it comes to traditional publishing, authors often get advances, which of course is a pro of traditional publishing, but it also means that they have to sell enough books to earn out that advance before they start receiving royalties. So this is another piece where you have a pro and a con for self-publishing because you get higher royalties, but you also have to pay, in terms of a con, all the upfront costs. You have to pay for your own editors. Traditional publishing authors do not have to pay for editors, cover art, that kind of thing. We do. As self-published authors, we have to pay for our editing, our cover art, our graphics. All of that stuff comes out of the upfront costs. And if you sell lots of books, you'll get that money back very quickly, and then you can put that towards your next books. But until you start making money, which for some indie authors can be 3, 5, 10 books down the road, to be honest, then you kind of having to put that upfront money in advance without any return for a little bit. Now, in my Publish and Thrive course, which actually is opening Saturday, July 20th, if you're watching this around that time that this video came out, I'm so excited to run this class again. But if you join Publish and Thrive, you'll get all of this information about budgeting and what I recommend you have as a budget to put into your books. But basically, I always recommend that people have enough money to cover the first 3 to 5 books before they're expecting to make a return. With traditional publishing, usually you're going to get an advance. So they might pay you $5, $10, $100,000 up front, and then they cover all your costs. And that is, of course, a big pro to traditional publishing if you can get a good enough deal. However, with indie publishing, if you can really find your niche and you can market your books really well, you can start making and earning that money really fast, really quickly, and you get so much higher royalties in return. So you kind of have to weigh that over time. When it comes to money and making money, what I would say for most people is long term, you can make a lot more money indie publishing or self-publishing with lower number of sales. So in traditional publishing, a lot of times to make 6 figures, let's say, as an author, you have to have really high sales in order to make that amount of money. Indie publishing, you really can be kind of a very low mid-list author and be making 6 figures because the royalties are so high, percentages are so high that you don't have to sell as many books to make more money. And that really long term is a huge pro. But the con to it is that you have to have that money in advance upfront in order to start making the money long term. It's all a balancing act. Pro number 4 is that as an indie publisher, as a self-publishing author, you own all of your rights. Because you have full ownership of your rights, you get to make all the decisions. So this goes beyond just the creative control. This also means you have full control over your distribution, the channels, whether you want to make audiobooks, special editions, you want to rewrite pieces of it. You can literally have control over everything because you own the rights. And that means that you can sell sub rights, you can own this over here, you can put your books into different translations if you want. There are lots of ways that you can then leverage those rights in order to make even more money and to build your audience even bigger. Now, sort of the con to that, there isn't necessarily a con to owning your rights, but the con is that you are now responsible for marketing that and actually doing something with those rights. Traditional publishers, they have all those channels like I was talking about before. They know how to get your book into translation. They know how to sell those rights to audio and to Japan and Italy and France and all those different places. Whereas as a self published person just getting started, I might not even know where to start getting my books into translations or getting them into bookstores in Italy. That feels really overwhelming. So even though you have all of your own rights and you can make all your own decisions, you have to know how to leverage that, which again comes down to time and expertise and knowledge, which takes time. Pro number 5 is that as self published authors, we can serve niche markets that you might not be able to serve as a traditionally published author. When traditional publishers are choosing which books they're going to put onto their roster for the year, they have to look at their bottom line because they have so much overhead. They have houses full of editors and New York offices and all these overhead costs, and they focus mainly on print copies. So there's a lot of cost that goes into producing a book. So they want to make sure that the books they put on their roster are going to sell them 5, 10, 100,000 copies, and they have that expectation. So they're going to be choosing things that are the most marketable or trendy or saleable in this moment, which means that your little niche thing that really has a small audience might not ever get picked up by a big traditional publisher. So if you are writing something more niche, like diverse categories, LGBTQ, or certain types of very underserved niches of cozy mystery or YA or anything that doesn't necessarily have mainstream appeal, a traditional publisher might tell you, no way, that's never going to sell. We don't want it. We're not going to invest in it. But you have to sell a lot less copies to start making money than they do because you can use pre made covers and you can use your best friend as your editor and you can keep your costs low and still be making that 70% royalty and make good money on only 100 sales or a really small niche underserved audience. And what's exciting about that is because people can't get this type of book, this niche book in traditional stores, you become the go-to person that they're looking to for that book. And it can make you a real superstar in your niche that might never get published traditionally. And indie authors, self-published authors have that power of saying, this is not something that's super mainstream, but I can write it and I can be successful at it, even though a traditional publisher wouldn't use it. The con to that is that you still have to know how to find your people. And when you're not mainstream and you're looking at a very small audience, it can take some time of tweaking your social media, or maybe you need to be more active on social media or utilize ads more than some other more mainstream genres would have to, because you got to find your people. You really have to focus in on your customer journey, customer expectations, and where are this small niche of people, this small pool of people that are going to like my stuff? Where do I find them and how do I attract them to me? So it could mean more marketing, more social media work from you. And so if you really love writing niche, but you hate talking to people, that could be a hard sell for you. But it also might be the only way you ever get to market. So this is definitely something to think about when it comes to your self-publishing journey if you really want to serve a very small, niched down audience. Number 6, global distribution. So of course you can get global distribution through traditional publishing, but when it comes to self-publishing, I could literally be selling my books with a single click all over the world at any moment. Like I could take a book right now and put it on sale in India, Japan, Russia, literally all over the world with just a simple click. Kobo Books sells in more countries, I believe, than any other publisher in terms of a vendor for our ebooks. I could also start my own Shopify store. I could sell on Apple Books in all the countries they serve. Amazon serves so many different countries. So I get that global distribution and I get access to readers and fans in Australia, New Zealand, India, just literally all over the world without having to go through the process of selling sub rights and figuring out translations. I can just put my English books available everywhere in the world. And that is so cool. Every time I get a message from someone who says, I'm in Brazil or I'm in India or I live in the Ivory Coast, like it's just so cool to know that my books have reached this global distribution without any extra effort on my part, just by putting them available on Amazon and Kobo Books. The downside to this, of course, is that we still have to figure out visibility. And visibility is one of the biggest challenges when it comes to indie publishing. Like, just because my book is available in Japan doesn't mean anyone in Japan knows about it or is interested in it. And the more saturated the ebook publishing business gets, the more invisible our individual books become, unless we have some other way of getting our books visible, which means marketing. And traditional publishing will do some of that marketing for you. Now, we won't get into the specifics of how much marketing they're going to do for you, because some people get really lucky and their books get really pushed, but usually only because the publisher really, really believes in that author, but also that they believe this is going to be a superstar book that's going to break out. If your book is really well written, but it just isn't the right timing for it, or the publisher and editor don't fully believe in it 100%, you might get very little marketing. Even though the publisher has access to a lot of visibility, you might only get a very small piece of that. But when you're self publishing, the visibility is all on you. Now, back when I first started in 2010, visibility was a lot easier. You just put your books up on Amazon and Apple and all these vendors. And because your book was only 99 cents or $2.99, it stood out. Now there's billion books out there that are at those price points. And so it's a lot harder to get visibility now than it was 10 years ago. And so that is a piece of the puzzle. You get global distribution, the opportunities are endless, but you do need to learn that piece of how do I make my book visible and how do I get sales? And that can take time, expertise, and again, learning. Seventh and final one, which again, I think is one of the most important, is agility. When you are traditionally published, you don't really get to just say, oh, let's take that book off sale. Let's market it this way. Let's put this on sale. Let's change this around. Let's change that cover. You don't have control over that. And a lot of times with traditional publishing, they're not remarketing books from 5 years ago if those books didn't sell. And in fact, a lot of traditional publishing is putting the weight on this book needs to sell in the first week or on pre-order. And if we don't see that performance, we're going to let it go and we're going to focus our resources on the books that are the racehorses, the ones that are doing big things right out the gate. With indie publishing, though, you have a longer runway. You have more time to build your career up. But more importantly, you have agility. You have that creative control to be able to say, this cover is not selling. It's not resonating. Let's get a new cover on that. People are saying that my heroine is really annoying. Let me go in and rewrite this piece to soften her up a little bit. I made this mistake over here with how I publish this. I'm going to pull it down and I'm going to republish it this new way. We have the ability to change and iterate and learn and grow on a dime. I could literally pull every book I've written down right now, put new covers on them, and relaunch them all in one day. And it would all be free to do it, other than the cost of the new covers or whatever else I needed to market it. But it didn't cost me anything to actually change it on Amazon. And that ability to be flexible, adaptable, to iterate and change, to listen to my readers and be able to put that knowledge to use in my next book, or to be able to change how I'm publishing things or how I'm showing up online, all of that becomes a big pro to self-publishing. Also, I haven't published a new book in 3 years, not a full length novel, because I've been more focused on teaching and sharing what I know and building this YouTube community. But that doesn't mean that my income has gone to zero just because I haven't been putting out new books. It means that I have the ability to continue to market and be innovative and package up and bundle and work on audiobooks and other things that are going to make me money, even if I haven't been writing as much. And I am still sitting here, even though my sales are only a fraction of what they used to be because of this shift of focus. I'm still sitting here making more money than I ever made as a full-time teacher, just off of passive backlist sales, because I'm able to be agile. I'm able to say, well, let me put this on sale. Let me market this. Let me take this backlist thing and build it up and blow it up. And there's so many tools available to indie authors to be able to say, this isn't working. Let me change it. Whereas when you're in traditional publishing, you give over those rights, you give over that creative control. And it can be really frustrating to watch your publisher just give up on your creative work and say, well, we're not going to put any more money into that because that isn't performing. But you, as the author, know if we could just change that cover, if we could just drop the price and run some sales, if we could just do this, but they're not going to do that for you most of the time. When you own and have all of your rights and creative control, you can experiment and try those things, which makes you more agile and more able to adapt and grow as the market changes. And being agile in this market also means that you can pivot your career. You can be writing women's fiction today and decide, you know what? This romantasy trend is where my heart has always been. I'm going to write a romantasy. And you could write one over the next couple of months and have a book out by the end of the year. So that is incredibly powerful. And it is so much fun to have that freedom of agility of being able to say, this isn't what I wanted to write. I want to go all in on this other thing. And of course, we need to put limits on that because if we were constantly hopping from one genre to another, it could be fun, but it might not be the most marketable way. So, as indie authors, we're always trying to find that balance between following our hearts, doing what's fun, following our passion and our creativity, but doing it in the most marketable way possible. So, the con to this, though, is that again, it all falls on you, and you don't really have the same support system of knowledgeable people just out the gate that traditional authors do, because a traditional author has an agent guiding them that's maybe been in the industry for a decade. They have an editor who has knowledge on how things sell. They have a publisher that's helping to support and make those decisions. And that publisher can say, we know from our market research, this is the cover that's going to sell the best. And if you get in with a really good deal and a really good editor and publisher that believes in your work, that can skyrocket you to places that indie publishing might not ever be able to do. But on the flip side, I will say, particularly in spaces like romance, there are some amazing, incredible authors in the self publishing world that become your support system that you can start to build masterminds with. And you can say, which cover should I use? What do you think about this? And it can be somewhat a balance to trust your own intuition and listen to other people, but it can also be an incredibly supportive environment that you can build up those support channels over time as long as you're willing to create those relationships. But in the end, self publishing is really so much about balancing having this creative control and these things that I want to do and wanting to put the work that I'm creating out in the world in this way with how can I do it in the most marketable way possible to still make money and still be aligned with who I am. And that is the biggest challenge. How do I market this? How do I get it visible? How do I make sales and put this book in a package that is going to be so just instant buy to the readers that are meant to be my readers, but still stay true to writing the things that I want to write? And if you would like to learn more about how to create that balance in your own career and how to self publish in a way that is really going to make you thrive and joyful, but also hopefully financially massively successful over time, I hope that you will consider joining us in my Publish and Thrive course, which starts July 20th. So if you're watching this when it first comes out, we will open on Saturday. And as promised, this is open to everybody, whether you're taking the course or not, just as a free way to give back. On July 27th, I'm going to run a full 2-hour live stream that day where I'm going to answer your questions. So you can ask questions from about my publishing path, about my opinions, about what I think is going on with the market, what I would do if I was just starting in your situation. Any questions are open for discussion. And that is going to be, again, July 27th. I will put all the details down below, along with a Google form where you can submit your questions for the live stream. And I will choose from the most interesting and the most commonly asked questions for the live. And then we will take some of them live as well. And that live stream will be available for anybody to watch for free in perpetuity forever here on my channel. So hopefully that will be a fun way to give back and for you to ask questions if you want me to go deeper on any of these topics. Like I said, I am so passionate about self-publishing. A lot of people in my early days called me an indie ambassador because I used to go around before I did YouTube to different conferences and signings and just basically tell people about the amazing opportunities that we have with self-publishing. But over time, this business has really changed and shifted into more of a focus on marketing and placement and how do you find visibility and sales in an oversaturated market. So, should you self publish in 2024? If you heard these pros, that I listed today and they lit you on fire like, yes, I want that creative control. I want that interaction with my readers and the ability to iterate and change and choose my own pricing, and that sounds fun to you, then you absolutely should do it. Don't let anybody tell you that the market is oversaturated. The market is saturated. It can't get any more saturated. It just is saturated. And there are proven ways to pull your books out of the pile and find the readers that you really are going to connect with. And I promise you, there are still brand new authors coming into the market every day that shoot up into 6 and 7 figures within the first 4 or 5 years of their career. If not, some of them, one of my Publish and Thrive students literally hit the top 20 on Amazon with her first release, following some of the things that we talk about in Publish and Thrive, as well as her own marketing expertise and knowledge. And I was so proud of her. Some of us are going to be on a slow path, some of us are going to find a fast path. But if that lit you up and you feel excited about it, then go for it, self publish. However, if you were listening to those cons and it just made you feel like, I can't do that, that's not for me, then follow the traditionally published route and find an agent, get yourself a really great publisher that believes in your work. And either way, I believe that you can find that success that you're looking for. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I do have a free workbook in my resource library called Everything You Need Before You Self-Publish. And it is basically a checklist with an explanation of all the decisions that you'll need to make, from ISBNs to cover arts to blurbs to marketing and all of that kind of thing. So if you want to grab that for free, sign up for my email list down below. If you are already on my newsletter, you can find that. Just search for Everything in the resource library and you can download it from there. I hope to see you in my self-publishing course, Publish and Thrive, coming up soon. And if you have any questions, let me know down in the comments. Otherwise, I will see you in my next video. Bye.